I'm Nicola and Crime World is back at Cork Opera House on March 27th, where Niall and I will be uncovering the secret world of Christy, the Dapper Don Kinahan. Join us for this live show. Tickets, corkpodcastfestival.ie. Right, we're recording, Niall, so could you take your head, please, out of the iPad?
Well, somebody has to do a bit of research.
Yeah, I've been researching. For goodness sake, I've been researching for the last 20 years of my bloody life.
Okay.
Guess who we're going to talk about?
Well, I do know, obviously.
Cartel leaders Daniel and Christy Kinahan.
Yeah.
And this story that has broken, this is a joint Sunday Times Bellingcat investigation, which is the story in it that Daniel and Christy Kinahan are in Dubai isn't really a story because we've known that, okay? And there has been, other than their own pushing the narrative out there that they are no longer there, we have been repeatedly assured they are there. So that's not necessarily the story. The story is how they got these, we'll go into a little bit of that first, I suppose, before we talk further about it, is how they got these pictures or how they recognised them at this public event. So it's during a mixed martial arts event last June, and they put pictures of associates of Daniel Kinahan into some AI tool, which is a facial recognition tool, and it threw back some of these faces at this event along with others. And then they went through this event and a video that lasted about 5 hours and recognised a guy in a Panama hat. I want to talk about why he's still in that Panama hat. So they have absolutely confirmed that Daniel Kinahan was there in the front row, and they are pretty much sure the guy in the Panama hat is Christy, although he turns his head and puts his hand up whenever a camera is on him.
However, you can see it is him. So, I mean, if you think about it, I remember the Kinahans were at an event, and I think it was MGM event in the old Tree Arena, and we did a very much less sophisticated version of this, where it was shown on one of the TV channels, and I think I recorded it and pressed pause on the recording. And we took a screenshot of them in the crowd, which a picture that we used again and again. Liam Byrne was there and Jaws Byrne. A very
I hate to tell you this, but we also had an undercover cameraman there because they're the pictures we used. Because Jerry Hutch was in the crowd, just a couple of spaces behind the Byrnes, and clearly not with them. And this sort of beginnings of these arguments were rumbling between Gary Hutch and Daniel Kinahan. But nonetheless, they have always attended sporting events, usually around boxing and now mixed martial arts and kickboxing and other things like that. They are fans of those sports, and they attend in the VIP seats.
Yeah, so it's incredible, of course, the AI technology, like how it can be used. I mean, it is, it's going to take over the world, and for somebody to go through 5 hours of footage like that, looking for, because when they eventually do see Christy Kinahan, he's, by the time it's blown up, it's quite unclear. It'd be an incredible amount of work, undoable amount of work. So for AI to be used in this way, it's really quite incredible.
No, it is. And to actually place them in seats at this event in last June is a very powerful thing, because you can talk until the cows come home that, they're still in Dubai, but an image is so much more powerful than words, really. So here you have, and Daniel Kinahan, I thought, has got very sort of fat shame. He's got old looking. His beard has gone grey.
Well, you could say he's becoming more and more distinguished as he gets further greyer, because it really can suit certain men, a bit of grey, but certainly the passage of time, he does look older. And they haven't, like Daniel Kinahan hasn't been, it's a very clear image of him. It is probably, like, if you think about it, it's probably since the sanctions he has appeared a couple of times in social media, but not as right. He was obviously, you were getting a constant update. And of course we know that they've been living freely, but to see them it is, as you said, powerful because it shows that not
this
only
is where they were this day at
yes,
this event,
and
etc.
also that they are, despite being so notorious across the world at this stage, that an organisation like Bellingcat would have an interest in them. They are living without fear or shame or hiding out, attending events.
They're
and
very comfortable in the Emirates. I mean, the Emirates, the UAE will say that they have extradited Sean McGovern back to Ireland because there is an arrest warrant. There was an arrest warrant in place when he was wanted here before the courts for murder. And they did do that. As far as I know, there isn't arrest warrants for either of or any of the Kinahans as of yet. There's a file with the Director of Public Prosecutions in relation to Daniel Kinahan. Yeah.
Yeah.
Christy Kinahan Sr., there's no suggestion we have a file before the Director of Public Prosecutions in relation to any criminality.
No, there's not. No.
And we have never been informed if there is a file for Christopher Jr. here in Ireland. We know that there's a money laundering investigation going on in Spain, and that is one of these Spanish ongoing. I would, wouldn't wager too much on it ever going ahead.
No.
To be honest with you, given the history of these Spain's somewhat inability, I think, to deal with a lot of these organised crime offences. The US, are they interested in
Well,
Christy Kinahan?
They certainly are interested in him.
Yeah.
We know that. But whether that ever amounts to seeking his extradition from anywhere, that's another matter. And of course, they would only seek to extradite him if he was involved in crimes within the USA homeland. Other than that, of course, they do monitor people, keep intelligence on them and share that intelligence with other law enforcement agencies. But, I don't think there's ever a suggestion that they were carrying out the bulk of their criminal activities within the US. Even when the US extradites people like El Chapo, they prosecute them for crimes committed mostly within the borders of the USA. So look, they are free men as of this moment, but I suppose it does show they're not social pariahs. Daniel Kinahan is pictured with a guy called Munir Lazez, if that's pronounced correctly, a long-term...
known as the Sniper.
Known as the Sniper. And he is a very well-known former UFC fighter. He previously spoke about his how great he thought Daniel Kinahan was. And he is, I think he was the first Arab ever to fight in the UFC. So that's one of a very high profile within that part of the world as a result. He's from Tunisia originally. So he would be a kind of very much a local icon for that reason. After the sanctions in 2022, he was one of the first people to come out and speak about Daniel Kinahan in a positive way. He spoke about him after a fight, saying he regarded as Kinahan as a friend. He said, "For me, it's a simple thing. It's a friend outside the gym and I just meet him for advice and things and he helped me through my career. I don't follow really this kind of news," he said. "I focus on the sport. I focus on my family. I focus on entertaining people and that's the most important." And he had said earlier on about Daniel Kinahan that man is a friend and an advisor. He's the one who picked me up every time life would kick me down. He's a real man of his word, and he's the one who teach me what does it mean, real family, real friend. It's someone I cannot thank him enough for where I am today and who I am today. He teach me the real manner. He teach me how to be responsible in my family, my friends, and my close ones. That's all. That's why I said that. All the shout out and credit to him. So he is obviously a Kinahan fan, and the fact that the passage of time has shown, I suppose, more and more information about the Kinahans' deep involvement at the very highest level of organised crime across the globe hasn't put him off hanging around with Daniel.
The image of Daniel was discovered, and then Bellingcat sort of scanned the crowd, obviously, and as I said earlier, spotted this man in a Panama hat, which they then focused in on, and they were able to see him in various different angles. But the hat is down over his eyes, as usual. It clearly is Christy Kinahan Sr.
Yeah.
So the first time we see this Panama hat was in and around 2008-9 when he's coming out of a court in Belgium, I think in Antwerp actually, and he's wearing this sort of man from Del Monte suit with the Panama hat.
Yeah, totally white.
Totally white. He's with the lawyer. He certainly doesn't look like an Irish gangster, and that's what's always been said about him. So it's on him there, right? It's on him when we see him later in Spain in 2010. And of course, we actually, I think, have the only bit of video footage that was ever taken of him. And you can see he's not in the Panama hat, but I'm nearly sure that time that video was taken, Eamon was there. I think I went back another time.
Yeah.
And I saw him. He didn't actually get out of the car to go to the court because he was signing on at the Estepona court at the time. But he went around the roundabout a number of times in a very big kind of a vintage Jaguar, and he had the Panama hat on him.
Yeah.
So the Panama hat has become his uniform.
Yeah.
So here he is sitting at an event in June. He's got the also trademark baby blue Lacoste t-shirt, trousers, and he wears that. Most images we have as well of him, but it's like as if he wants to be seen in that Panama hat. You know what I mean? Isn't it? I mean, you'd swear he wanted to be photographed like that, looking like that.
I mean, I don't know. Does a Panama hat stop you being identified so easily? I don't think so. But it's certainly.
How many people are wearing Panama hats these days?
I haven't got one myself as of this minute. But I mean, look, he's such an interesting character, really, isn't he? In terms of,
I think it's to hide the bald, and I think Daniel Kinahan is the same because he's always in a baseball cap or, the Peaky Blinders caps in the cold. But maybe it's vanity.
It could be. It could be. Or, it could be. I mean, he certainly, Christy Kinahan Sr., like, he's, of course, he was called the Dapper Don, I think, back those first pictures you talked about then. I think that's where that moniker really started to stick to him. But he is unique in even in that image that he puts across. If you consider all the other criminal figures that of his generation, none of them ended up going around in suits and things like that, and Panama hats and white slacks and chinos and all of that. It certainly is.
There's very few Irish men wear white slacks.
I wouldn't.
And chinos.
I wouldn't get away with them myself.
No, you wouldn't. But I mean, you need to go to. I know a lot of people, sort of in Belgium and that, who would wear them and they look normal.
Yeah.
Sort of men, Mediterranean style type men, or French men in particular, look completely normal in white pants. That if you put them on an Irish man, they'd be laughed out of the place.
Well, they would. But it's. Yeah, he's nearly 70 years old, of course, as well. This is the other matter.
And like a 1.5 billion family fortune now, amassed in and around. How somebody comes up with that sum, I don't particularly know, but that's not balked at by law enforcement or anyone.
No.
It's in around 1.5 billion.
Yeah.
Which is obviously in various countries and territories around the world, stocks and shares and cryptocurrency, in all sorts of investments. And clearly they're living still a life of absolute luxury.
Yeah, and look, Daniel Kinahan certainly ended up in Dubai, and he sort of went public, and he perceived that combat sports, boxing in particular, was a way for him to move past his criminal activities and to become a sort of legitimate businessman with a hint of danger, I suppose.
Yeah.
Now, obviously then the sanctions ultimately put an end to it publicly, and we know that Daniel Kinahan certainly had to step away from all of that world. But we've constantly been told, haven't we, ever since, that he maintains some sort of hand in it from his base in Dubai. Now, he certainly has a much, much lower profile within the boxing world. I mean, where he was really at the very pinnacle of the world sport, the sport across the world. But we continue to hear that you know, his break hasn't been as absolute as has been let known. So it's interesting to see them both at this event. The event was called the 971 Fighting Championship, and it was in Dubai's Coca-Cola Arena in June 2025. And it was on for 6 hours, which is really, really long. There was a number of international fights, MMA bouts, and you just do wonder when you look at Daniel still floating around there, still hanging around with Mr. Lazzez. Is he left that fight game all total?
I wonder how they're feeling about events out there now.
Well, I mean, it has. I think that there has to be a factor, which I've said before, but it definitely has to be true. This is in Bellingcat. Bellingcat are sort of a unique organisation, journalistic, sort of investigative journalism organisation. They particularly focus on the use of technology at times, and very, very high profile body, and very much involved in the US and all of these. In investigating sort of the Trump administration on some occasions. The fact that the Kinahans are a target for them or worth their while, means that they have achieved this level of notoriety. And that level of notoriety, it cannot be good news for the Dubai law officials, and it must put them at risk. A story like this, if you look at it and Google it, anybody can do it. You can see how it's been followed up hundreds of times already in the space of a few days. So that has to be a millstone around their neck and for their future prospects.
Doesn't seem to have bothered them so far.
No. It doesn't, but it hasn't bothered them so far, but eventually these things can take a toll, and someday an extradition warrant or an request for extradition is going to come across the desk of an official in Dubai, and he's going to talk to somebody ahead of him and say, well, what do we think about this? And somebody is going to say, well, if we turn it down, we're going to be subject to a range of bad publicity, not just on Nicola Talent's crime world, but probably in newspapers like the New York Times or the New York Post, all of who've featured stories about the Kinahan cartel.
Christy Kinahan has been such a sort of an innovator all along, and I think a risk taker, somebody with huge ambition. He has to be currently, his ambition has to be that he will live out his days.
And of course,
without having to answer to anybody in law enforcement anywhere. And I'd say, whether he was in Dubai last June, they will have a plan if anything does come. He's going to take his chances, isn't he?
He's going to take his chances, and which we don't.
He's done well so far.
He's done well so far. And also, we have to remember that he has a young family. He has a new young family.
They're not that young now.
Would they not be? But they're...
No, those kids would be, and this is with his fourth partner, Nessie Yildirim, sorry. Those children would have been sort of 6, 8-ish in around...
the mid-2010s.
Those children are well into their late teens now, I'd say.
Yeah, but still a relatively young family. And yeah, so he retirement isn't probably as clear as running away and living on an island somewhere. But yeah, he has certainly, since the moment he's been landing in Dubai, he seems to have been preparing a number of outs.
That AI technology is pretty scary, isn't it?
It is pretty scary. Yeah.
Is it more scary than the Kinahan cartel, that you can be, somebody will upload your image into a computer and you can be found wherever you are?
Well,
in the world,
since I'm very boring and do nothing, I'll be okay.
Yeah.
It's you that has to worry more.
You could be caught on camera in a Chinese takeaway, and that'd be the end of you. Or ordering a cappuccino somewhere.
Well, I'm pretty... don't need AI to predict my movements.
Right. Okay. Well, let's leave it at that.
Thanks, Nicola.
If you are already a subscriber to crimeworld.com, you've probably binged on our 6-part deep dive into the life and the rise of the dapper Don Christy Kinahan. From the streets of Dublin to the head of a global cartel, what made and moulded the ambitious Kinahan? And where is he now as he runs from the law? For those of you who haven't joined us yet, here's a short extract from our exclusive series, which is just a click away. So we're going to do a rest here. We're going to start this tome, which is the sort of the life and crimes of Christy Kinahan Sr., who has to be the most fascinating individual in the entire sort of Kinahan cartel set. You know, he is an intriguing character, to say the least.
I think he's the most interesting of all the gangland criminals, really, if you see where he's come from and where he's ended up and how he's managed to navigate through all of those eras of organised crime. An incredible story. If he was involved in another arena of life, he'd be regarded as a kind of heroic businessman. But of course he's not. He's involved in a murderous cartel. But an incredible story. And
there's a little bit of intrigue and mystery to his background, which we're going to go into. Some of it is clear, and other bits, the stories that go around the mix, and you can never, like, for example, you know, some people would say he was a heroin addict. I know he did tell the courts at one point that he did, but he did it for a reason. And the reason was he wanted a free education.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's very interesting, the heroin addict, and maybe we'll come back to that.
We'll come back to it, because that is something that, you know, certainly some people close to him say that was never the case.
Yeah.
And those who are sort of, I suppose, become his enemies in more recent times would definitely say that, like it's a
stick to beat him.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there's other little bits that are unusual. We'll start and we'll go through as much as we know factually, and then we'll also discuss the rumours. So he's born in 1957. He's 6 years older than Jerry the Monk Hutch, which just gives him a little bit of a, you know, we can see where he is. He's what I would always say was into the bosom of a respectable middle-class family. Now, some intrigue comes with this. His father, to my understanding, was a taxi driver who worked the Gresham rank on Stephen's Green. And that would have been a good job.
That would have been a good job, a well-earning job. Certainly taxis, back in the day when taxis were protected. His father was also at some point registered, or went, I think, on as a dairy farm manager. And also people would say he was involved in kind of street trading, not, you know, as a lot of people in Dublin would have been over the years, involved in some stalls and selling in that sort of arena. So Christy Kinahan is raised in Cabra, but his birth cert says that he was born in England, in a place called Perryvale, near Ealing, I think, in London. So this is the late 1950s, when at that time in Irish history, we were, you know, there was high unemployment. A huge number of people left Ireland to go to England at times to get work. Many of them returned, but that would have been one of the big points of emigration, where young couples got married and went over there. Certainly Christy Kinahan wasn't raised in England, but he certainly does seem to have lived there at times. He's had connections to Birmingham and that sort of area, maybe all his life. So he's described, I suppose, as a middle class, having a middle class upbringing.
Well, I suppose the first house that we can look upon that we know he was in as a child, and he was the only boy in a family of 3 girls, Denise, Maria and Sally Ann. The mother appears to run a B&B from what is a generous Edwardian house. Do you know the name of the road?
Charleville Road.
Charleville Road.
So, I mean, yeah, I know it well. I mean, I would have grown up very close to there. I mean, those houses are worth a huge amount of money. Now, like a lot of houses in that area, for example, those big houses on the North Circular Road, which aren't far away. And there probably would have been times where you would have picked them up at a bargain price, but it would be at, very, very far away from some of the figures we've discussed. For example, the grinding poverty in which Jerry Hutch would have been born into. Certainly Christy Kinahan would have been raised in something that's now worth a huge amount of money, that home. And it's
would they have always been a middle class sort of a home? We're using that term very loosely here. That's part of East Cabra. Yeah.
Right now, if you walk through East Cabra now, you can't. There's organic coffee shops and all of that sort of stuff, and houses being sold for routinely close to $500,000. Like back in the 60s, it wouldn't have been so much like that, I think. And those houses, like a lot of places in sort of Stony Batter or somewhere like that, those houses wouldn't have been seen as posh houses.
Would a taxi driver's wage have bought that house?
Well, it would have. It would be far, far bigger than most houses in that area, and would have cost a lot of money. But I suppose it's a different context, and Cabra would have been different then. Christy Kinahan would have been growing up in the 60s, early 70s when he's a teenager, and Cabra at that stage would have been a lot kind of wilder, I suppose. Like a lot of areas, there was a lot of homes built at one stage, and young people grew up, and it certainly would be a far more settled area, just like places like Crumlin and Drimnagh have become far more settled as the time has gone on. So he would have been brought up in an area that I wouldn't describe as being a sort of upper middle class area. He would have been grown up in a working class area, in a big house in a working class area, really.
And it's the big house.
Yeah.
It's an impressive looking house. It always would have been. We do have some suggestion that the family originally lived in St. Teresa's Gardens.
Yeah.
To go from St. Teresa's Gardens to Cabra and to this Edwardian period property is a huge leap.
It is a huge leap, and people would have said to me, for example, that the connection between the Kavanagh and the Kinahan family, for example, has always been a bit.
Bomber Kavanagh's parents.
Bomber Kavanagh's parents would have known Christy Kinahan's dad. They would have been friendly. All those people have no involvement in crime. There's no suggestion of that, but that it would have been, I suppose, maybe not as straightforward as this is he's a middle class guy. It's somewhere along that line, I suppose. And like most Irish people have, the poverty is only one generation away, I suppose.
Well, he certainly had aspirations, and he was very smart. In school. Though it is said, and it just shows you when somebody gets as big a news story as Christy Kinahan that his leaving cert results have been made public. Do you know that? Didn't know that.
And maybe not made public, but the Sun did a story about how he actually failed his leaving.
Right.
So Christy Kinahan, look, there's no doubt about him being smart, but certainly that was said that he only passed 2 subjects. He would have gone to, it said he went to Declan's in Cabra first and got expelled, and then went to O'Connell's in the North Inner City. Now, O'Connell's Christian Brothers School, probably one of the most famous schools in Dublin. My own father would have gone there. People would have got a scholarship, and it would have seemed to have been a really prestigious school. Past pupils would have included James Joyce, Pat Kenny, the broadcaster, former Taoiseach Sean Lamass, PJ Mara. Also, interestingly, and probably a relative contemporary of Christy Kinahan would have been Tony Gregory would have gone there, who would play a huge prominent role in the anti-drugs marches in the city. So he would have gone. He would have, again, that would have been sort of a prestigious school. But he seems to have not thrived. And then I think we get into a bit of a grey area when he leaves school.
But he excelled, apparently, at sport and at kickboxing.
Yes, and that was a thing that he kept up, I think, through all his life, one way or another. And obviously his sons would have a huge interest in boxing as well.
If you liked what you just heard, go to crimeworld.com now and subscribe for more ad-free listening, exclusive content, and the best crime stories around.